All right, everyone, welcome to Demystifying Solar. This is Tim Heltzel and Heidi Hahn from SunDay Solar. We're here to talk a little bit more about solar and how we can help you and what it would look like typically for solar installation to take place on your home and how you would sort of go about making this happen. So first of all, the reason why we're doing this is Heidi and I, we really believe in the power of solar energy to sort of work towards a different energy paradigm in the future. And that's what we believe here at SunDay Solar. This is what's called a project Sunroof by Google. Google has been able to put out this open source software to help homeowners on their own sort of discover their own solar potential for their home. So that's what we're going to be looking at first, and how you can use this to get an idea of before you call one of your trusted local contractors. You can get an idea of on your own as to what solar will look like for you. So just at a broad glance here in our local neighborhood of Charlottesville, this is called an irradiance map here, and the irradiance map is going to give us some better numbers on the estimated solar potential around the area. And again, this is why we believe in this stuff, and why we think that distributed solar can really make a difference. With 66% of the roof space in Charlottesville being viable for solar installations. That looks like an average square foot of 476 square feet, and an average kilowatts AC output of 8.3 thousand per year, which is just about what half of what the average homes around here probably use. So we can see that in a distributed energy future paradigm, we are looking like solar on distributed rooftops, since a lot of the infrastructure is there already to bring that power to your neighborhood and back to the grid, is a viable solution. And there is some solar potential there. So on this heat map, you can zoom in a little bit more here to understand more about, and I'm sorry, this keeps on happening. More about particular neighborhoods and boroughs that are going to have better or worse solar potential. Keep on zooming in here. We'll zoom in on some particular houses in a neighborhood. This could look like one of your houses in your neighborhood or your neighbor's home. So what this program does is it takes into account shading effects of trees, the orientations of homes, roofs versus south, as well as all the other data that we're going to need for this area. That includes weather data and typical amounts of sunlight per year to help us understand a little bit more about particular homes and which roof faces are going to be the best for solar. So when we look at these different pictures of homes, you see that this roofs aren't shaded exactly like they are if you're here on the face of the earth, but what they are shaded with is a layer of data. This layer of data shows us in the number of units of kilowatt hours. So the same thing that you would use in your home, the same thing you get billed for every month by your local energy provider. This is going to show you in kilowatt hours annually, or kilowatt hours per certain unit of time, how much of the sun's energy is hitting your roof in a particular time, particular area throughout the year. So if you're just going to evaluate your own home for solar and think about where the sun is striking your home the most, we're looking for places where the sun's going to be hitting your roof year round. And the reason why this year round makes a difference is we need to try to find our ways for solar to produce energy as consistently as possible. So this consistency is one of the big issues with renewable energy as a new paradigm for energy, being the fact that fossil fuel energy generators are able to produce energy constantly and consistently. Well, here in the new energy paradigm, we're looking for ways that solar can produce as consistently as possible. And that means in the winter too. In the winter, of course, the sun is a little bit lower in the sky. It strikes the earth at a more oblique angle. And with those strikes at the oblique angles, then we're looking at a little bit different power generation throughout the year. So this is this home here that's right in the middle of my screen is a good example of solar throughout the year and the different roof faces. We can see the lighter colors of yellow here are showing us the higher amounts of energy per meter squared. And we can see the roof faces that are facing the bottom of the screen, which is south. And here in the northern hemisphere, the sun strikes most surfaces from the south throughout most of the year. And so that's going to be where the solar is going to have its highest potential. So you look for places on your roof like this, places where the sun's potential is going to be a little bit higher than others. If a solar contractor would come out here, then you can imagine which roofs the proposal might spec solar on. We would expect solar on this roof, possibly on this roof. With these roofs over here kind of being the last resort, with a little bit less return on investment from those roofs. Let's have another example over here in this neighborhood. So we can see here, in Charlottesville that we love our trees around here, and the trees kind of are an impediment for solar production and energy. But I will also say the fact that the trees are going to reduce your overall energy consumption on our hot days as for cooling. So there's a give take, a win-win. You don't need to go out and cut down all the trees in your yard to put solar up, because when we cut down trees, we're starting to see more cooling costs that are going to be associated with that. So this is the first way you can start to evaluate your home for solar or your neighborhood for solar potential. And the way that we would suggest it is to go on to Sunroof by Google and type in your specific address here. So we're going to go back to our address here in Charlottesville at 1139 River Road. So here's our SunDay Solar warehouse. And we actually do have solar panels on our warehouse already. This area right through here is covered in solar. And as you can see, it's a smart choice for these big commercial buildings, being a little bit more open in scale and being typically with these broader, flatter roofs. In fact, this entire roof that the cursor is on right now is covered in solar, as well as we have a big solar array in the field right here. Our neighbors at MS Events are also a solar producer. And we can see that, the solar is going to be helping these larger, flatter, broader commercial roofs, exponentially. So typically, here's how this is going to work when you call a solar contractor. These solar contractors are going to open up a design program, and they're going to pull up your address. So we'll go down to a client who let us use their address here, and pull this client up and talk a little bit more about their proposal and what they saw and how it was built for them. Actually, let me go to a little bit more straightforward one. Lucky enough to go up and meet with Thomas at the top of the mountain. From Thomas's point of view, he has a great portion for solar. And here's how this project works then from then on out. So typically we ask you for a copy of your most recent electric bill. Your most recent electric bill, then we enter into this, your historical usage data. So solar is built, our solar agreements here in Virginia are built around a program that's called net metering. So net metering basically takes your usages for every month and annualizes them into how much energy you use over the course of a year. And that yearly energy then is sort of our target goal for what your solar should produce. So we look to try to make your net energy be zero. We want to make you have a net zero household, or at least close to it, without going over. It's like Price is Right rules. We want to get as closest without going over. Here's why we do that. The power companies aren't going to be benefiting you as much from your energy that you produce that you don't use versus the energy that you are producing in your house over the course of a year that you end up using. So this is a pretty great system here. And it helps the power companies not this could be an issue if let's say that it's during the middle of the day and it's not a peak time of usage. Peak times of usage are times on the grid when we're getting a lot of electric draw. These are times like the morning and the afternoon, times when people are waking up and turning on all their electric appliances. Times when we really have to have a lot of energy being produced. And then during the middle of the day, people are usually out and about, out at work. Our workspaces are a little bit smaller than our home spaces, in terms of square foot per person. So we're using a little bit less energy while we're actually out the door at work or away from our homes. But that's the time during the middle of the day when our solar is going to be producing the most energy here. And let me pull this up with a example here. We have Solar Edge. SolarEdge is one of the leading companies in the world for residential solar. And SolarEdge right now has it's pretty much has a market share of residential solar. So it's very likely that a solar company will spec you a few different designs, and we'll talk about those here in a little bit. So basically what you're going to see from a profile of a typical day is a bell curve of power production. As you can imagine, the sun gets more bright, or the sun's energy be striking the panels in a way that it'll be able to absorb them a little bit more during the peak times of the day when the sun is directly overhead, and that's when you'll be making the most energy, with it sort of sloughing off in the morning and the evening. Great. So you already spoken with your solar provider, and your solar provider so far set up a good rapport, and they think that they'll be trustworthy and give you accurate numbers. And part of them giving you accurate numbers is you need to give them accurate numbers. So we need to understand this power profile that's here in front of us is going to be very crucial to understanding the exact amount of energy that you're going to need for us to produce with solar. This client also asked for me to take into account a few different details, which is going to be the additional consumption from an electric vehicle. And we figured that out I asked him what make and model of the vehicle this client was interested in getting. Then we talked to them about their driving habits, how many miles they think they're going to put on their car every week, every month, every year. And through that, it's pretty simple to come up with a number of kilowatt hours. Is going to be added to their bill every month. So I was able to put that in there as well. So then the second thing that we do after we have this put in is we need to start to build a model of your home. So this model is going to start to take into the environmental aspects of your home. We're going to talk about, they're going to affect how much solar energy your roof is going to produce, or your spot is going to produce. So I was able to build this model of this person's home. As you can see, it is 3D, and that is because it does take into account the irradiance of the sun in terms of, well, here's what the angle and the shading and the orientation of the home is going to have, and this roof will have effect on the production. If you look down the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you can see solar irradiance and solar access and total access of solar. Here we're looking at solar access. Well, there's not any shading here, so we're getting 100%. Irradiance is going to be a little bit different here. So we can see for this direction, again, we have that typical bell curve that we see between January and December. As you can imagine, also in the way that as the year progresses, it's kind of like a fractal version of a day with the sun. If we have the morning in January in the same place and the evening in December in the same place on our histogram, we can see a standard deviation there in terms of the standard distribution between the sunnier months and the least sunnier months. And this is typical, and we'll see this anywhere. So then basically this is telling us how much energy is striking our roof per meter squared, and that helps our program come up with how we're going to size your system. The second thing that a client that a solar contractor will do then will be to take and to drop modules onto your roof. So when we're manually placing these modules here, we look for the places of our roof that are going to have the highest irradiance. As you can see, we have shading from these skylights here. We also try to keep it in the most continuous block as possible. So I have these in a continuous block here up top, which was where the client asked us to put these. He wanted to leave access to us to the skylights for servicing them. We also needed to leave access there from a fire department standpoint as well. So we have our panels into our system. The panels are going to have a certain amount of efficiency, but the efficiency between panels is all very, very close right now. We're working on just either, a percent or a fraction of a percent difference between makes and models of panels. So if you are looking for solar right now and you want to talk to your contractor about what type of solar panel that they're looking for, solar panels do have lots of different price points. The price points are going to vary between manufacturers and efficiencies per square foot. So in each solar panel comes in a different amount of power being our wattages of the panels. So just like a light bulb would have a different power for its brightness of, a 100-watt light bulb or a 60-watt light bulb, those all equate to how much energy any given moment those light bulbs are going to be requiring to operate at their maximum efficiency. Well, the solar panel is kind of the opposite. Instead of energy required, it's energy it can produce at any moment. Just like a light bulb, if you would take that wattage, let's say it's a 100-watt light bulb, and you multiply it by an hour, then you get your watt hours or your kilowatt hours. So the same thing with solar panels, except in the inverse. We have a solar panel that can produce a certain number of watts. You multiply that by how many hours it can produce those watts, and you have a certain number of watt hours or kilowatt hours a solar panel can produce as opposed to consume. So that's how our system is able to come up with these fairly simple ways of determining with these algorithms how your solar panels will produce, what amount of energy your solar panels will produce. So the last piece of equipment in our system is an inverter. Some clients use inverters on each panel. This is called a micro inverter system. We use a solar edge inverter system, which has one central localized inverter and is fed by power optimizers, feeding to each panel. The panels connect to the inverters. Either way, the panel has a production in DC or direct current. This is going to be the same type of energy that a battery outputs. Our homes are set up to run off AC or alternating current. The alternating current is better for distributed power. It can travel through lines a lot easier with a lot less loss through the power lines. So that's why we sort of switched over to alternating current. The electrons vibrate back and forth in a motion as compared to making a round trip like they would from DC. So here our DC comes out of our panels in terms of positive and negative potential. And that potential goes into the inverter where it is changed from DC to AC that your home can use. The inverter is kind of the brain of the system and is able to keep track of the energy that you produce and use in a data logger. And here in a moment, I might be able to pull some of that stuff up for you all to check out. So we have a system here that has been connected. Each panel is connected to the next one right beside it. And this is how it works in solar. It's kind of like batteries. You could put a positive next to the negative terminal and keep on doubling those up into a longer circuit. It's going to produce more power and then into the inverter. And the inverter feeds directly into the grid home of your system. So the power leaves the inverter and goes directly into the electrical system of your home. There in the electrical system, you are powering any material or any appliance that you are using at that moment with the sun if the sun is shining. So it follows the path of least resistance. The electrons do, and the oscillations do follow the path of least resistance directly into your appliances. And then with the wonders of net metering, anything that you are not using at that time, any electrons you are not using from your solar, pass through your inverter again into your electric system and then back through the utility meter, which is that globe thing that sticks out outside of your home that the electric service has. And it passes backwards through there. When it leaves your home through your meter, through a special bidirectional meter, it is tracked. The bidirectional meter tracks the energy that comes into your home, like a typical meter would, that they would charge, the power company will charge you for, as well as tracking the energy that leaves your home. So it's a great part about this net metering, is that once the energy leaves your home, you are given a credit for that energy. That credit is worth the exact amount that you pay retail for your power, which is a great deal because Dominion's generation charge is, I'm sorry, power company's generation charge is a lot less than their actual kilowatt hour charge to you. The kilowatt hour charge has a lot of different other fees and things associated with it, like transmission and distribution and things that take the power to you, as well as other generation fees and riders. Well, luckily with solar, you get to avoid all those things because you are making power with your solar panels. It is worth 1-to-1 what you pay for solar electricity, what you pay for your typical electricity, and then it's then offset by the solar. So over the course of a calendar month, we'll break it down first into a month and then to a year. Actually, first we'll start with a day. So we already spoke about the times of peak usage. Time of peak usage is in the morning and the evening. With this time of peak usage, your solar, when we saw this this graph here of the day of the months in the year, we also talked about how that is what it will look like over the course of a day too, with a morning and an evening. So when you're out of your home, you are using, probably going to be generating the most energy in times when we're typically not using the most energy. So this energy then leaves your home, goes to the meter, and is tracked. And then in the evening, when you get home and turn everything on, your energy consumption in your home starts to go up, and you start to draw in credits from your electrical provider that you actually put there with solar. So it's not the exact same electron. That electron has probably gone somewhere into the line and oscillated its way, possibly away to your neighbor's home or somewhere else. And then they get to benefit from the fact that they're actually using that renewable energy electron, but then you benefit from it financially in terms of that 1-to-1 payback. So over the course of a day, you have this sharing, this trading of electrons and energy, and then that also works out to the course of a month. So if over a month's time you end up using less energy than you generate, that energy is then put back into the grid and you get a credit for it, which is then transferred to next month's bill. So there is a potential that at the end of the month, you will have 0 electric bill during the peak summer. You will have enough credits to store up to pass on to the next month. And if the weather isn't so good next month, then you could potentially use those credits or store more credits for the following month. This is done over the course of a calendar year. Your solar provider will enter you into this agreement with the power company called the net metering agreement. And that net metering agreement will then be the course of a calendar year that starts and stops on the day that your system is commissioned, which is given permission to operate by the power company. That being said, you can imagine that you would need some time to store credits for the colder months, for winter, for the months when we're not going to have as much solar potential as we have during the sunny summer days. So we're going to take those credits and store them. So it's important to think about what time of the year. It could be important to think about what time of the year you're asking to get solar installed. Okay, so this client's roof was enough to accomplish a certain number of electrical savings, but wasn't enough to completely satisfy what they would like. So we have another option for ground-mounted solar. Ground-mounted solar, as you can imagine, varies differently from the roof-mounted solar on its location of mounting. Here we are having two different setups here, and these different setups are going to have 2 different price points, with the roof being the most effective in terms of cost per watt. So we really want to let our solar contractors, if we're thinking of our most financial benefit here, preliminarily and first go to the roof for installation first. It's going to be the best price for us in terms of electricity generated, if your roof is viable in terms of not being too shaded. And then second, go for the ground in terms of we have space there, or it's less shade. So then your solar contractor is going to run our simulation log here. And our simulation log is going to tell us throughout each month what our system produces versus what we consume. So over the course of the year time, our consumption and our production will hopefully even out. And this person wanted to offset a little bit more than they were using. So we were able to get them up to 5% of their annual usages. And in certain territories, you're limited to 100%, 125%, or 150% of what you currently use over the last calendar year. So just talk to your solar provider and see if there is an option that will work for you. So here we have some more of the nitty gritty here. We have for every kilowatt hour, we have the kilowatt power it needed to produce that. And a 1.3 yield is pretty good for the market around here. And then we have the different factors that go in here to think about. They're called losses. So basically we have as much solar as we could have, and then let's see what happens in our algorithm to make it not quite perfect. Our tilt's off a little bit, and then we lose about 5.5%. This person on the top of the mountain, so her horizon is not going to be an issue. This person doesn't have very low-lying trees around their home, so shade was not an issue. Soiling is the technical term that has to do with the sunlight bouncing off the panel's reflective surface, which is glass, so sometimes it does reflect. And our incident angles here have to do with, again, with this just conversions, optical losses. Usually our biggest ones through here are going to be tilt, and the largest is usually shading. Shading is the bane of your solar contractor and of your solar electric bill being reduced as much as it can be. So we think of shading as probably, one of the hardest things to get around. That in orientation, either anything east, north, anything south, west, or east is going to be ideal. Anything just going to be north facing, then you have to debate whether it's worse than the shading issues or not that we were seeing here. And as we work down, we can see there is a little bit of losses associated with the DC wiring, and then in the AC, there's a little bit of losses and a little bit of clipping going on here. 2% clipping is probably a little bit high, and I think this was needs to have a little bit more work done to it to increase the inverter size. Inverters have a certain capacity of energy they can take in and put out. This is saying that over the course of the year, this system inverter is a little bit too small. So ask your solar contractor about that, whether the inverter is clipping at all, and make sure it's not clipping. I'm going to go back and work on this one and see which one of these arrays inverter is a little bit too small and see what we can do about the clipping on it. So this would then come to you in terms of our payments. Of course, that's what we're looking for here. When we look on the right-hand side of this, we can see our cash flow analysis. This cash flow analysis is fairly typical, with being about a 15-year return on investment for your payback. That's something you can typically expect. If you have a very, very good roof and you're finding a very, very low price, we can maybe get it down to around 10 years. That would be for a very south-facing roof, not ground-mounted. Everything, all the cash inputs that go into that would be very low, and the benefits would be very high. So we can see here that they do have a definite return on investment. This system's right here, over the course of 25 years, which is the warranty life of the system. Each part of our system, each of the largest parts of the system, has a cash flow. Has a warranty of 25 years from the manufacturer, to ensure that we can get to this point where over the life of your system, it saves you $30,000 worth of energy if you're this person. And that is usually at today's rate with today's electric rate, or maybe we usually use about 2.5% annual increase in utility rates. This is one area that will probably look different depending on which contractor you talk to. A lot of contractors use different rates for utility increase. So that makes this number look a little bit better. If we say that 10 years down the road, your energy in general is going to be way more expensive, then that means the energy you produce is going to be way more valuable as well. And here's what a loan structure typically looks like. You end up paying just a little bit more for your loan unless your roof is ideal. If your roof is ideal and all the cash inputs are very low, then you'll end up paying less than what you pay, less for your loan and monthly payments than what you pay for your typical current electricity. And it should come to you in the form of a proposal. All proposals are going to look a little bit different. Some are going to be a little bit more data heavy. Ours is a little bit more data heavy. Not quite as flashy, but it's going to give you all the important information here. So we have system size in kilowatts. Again, remember, it's like that 100-watt light bulb. Let's say that you have 100-watt light bulbs. Well, you can tally up the total number of watts you have there into kilowatts, and that would be the total power of the system. Here, the system is 12 kilowatts. That would be the number of panels, which is 33 panels, times their wattage. They're 365 watt each. That lands us with this. We have taken into account our solar electric bills. This is average over the entire year. This person will pay about $17 average bill. Some year they'll have zero. And then we have our system costs, incentives, and net costs, and of course our lifetime savings here. Lifetime savings takes into account the fact that you did have an input for this in the beginning, and it doesn't, and it takes that out of the equation. So we have our system cost here. Ground mounts are a little bit more expensive than roof mounts, so you can expect to see a number probably a little bit less than this number for the same size system. And then we have our incentives. It's looking like it's probable and possible that here in the future, the full tax credit, which I've always known to be 30% of our job, which is a incentive. It comes back to you in the form of a federal tax credit. Will be reinstated. Right now it's at 26%, but in the future we're thinking that it'll go back up to 30%, and that means that 30% of that system's cost comes back to you, or 26%, just to make it what you're seeing right here, will come back to you in the form of a federal tax credit. The federal tax credit can be used for one thing and one thing only, and that is to pay your owed federal taxes. So you're going to be able to fill out a form that we'll send you, and it's pretty easy government form that basically just has one line of your solar system. Some people have had a lot of success taking other parts of a project and lumping them into the cost of the solar system. If there is a roof that needs replaced for solar, we've seen people in the past have a lot of success with taking the roof credit or taking the solar credit for part of the roof. And again, these are things that you should talk to your tax professional about and see if you're comfortable trying to make those things work for you. Two different options. We have a cash option and a loan option. Typically, you're going to find your best overall cash flow from a cash option. That is, if you can put out the cash right now for it, it's basically, you can think of it as buying your home, buying your electricity versus renting your electricity. And when we're buying the infrastructure, we're going to have a much better return on investment because eventually we're going to own that infrastructure. This would be how much your solar system creates in terms of energy. Paying off the system. In the 16th year, the system is paid off, and you still have 10 years of producing energy. We like to get that to be around 10 years is, like I said, really ideal. So it's where we try to make it be at for cash systems. Then of course there's a loan option, and a loan option is going to be best if you have really ideal roof face and not a lot of cash to put into this right off the bat. When you go at it from that instance, typically clients are trying to find the lowest monthly payment. It's going to be less than their electric bill, and that's very, very probable. When we talk about loans versus cash, typically there is a little bit of an increase in price for loan options. or actually, I'm sorry, there is a decrease in price for cash options. We're able to offer cash discounts here. So we offer cash marketing discounts to help our customers make the decision to go with cash. So we're SunDay Solar. We're a local company. We really take our pride in beautiful work and clean work, and we want to be leaders in the renewable energy paradigm that's happening, and also we just want to give you the best information possible. So I was hoping to open it up now to questions and to anything that we can do to make this a little bit better for you. So does anybody have anything that we want to talk about in terms of burning questions for solar?
I wouldn't say, I don't know if I really have a question, but I just really appreciate you putting this presentation on. It's really helpful. In terms of in terms of the financing aspect,
Yes,
are
sir.
those offered like through your company, or does the homeowner have to kind of like secure that financing on their own?
That's a great question. Typically, our solar contractors work with financing partners. There's a few big financing partners out there in the solar world. The financing partner that we typically use, Sunlight Financial, is something that we work through with the homeowner to get to get the credit approval and to offer you to show you what is available. And then it is kind of a third-party agreement between you and these federal credit unions. So that's something that we do the legwork for to get you the all the information that you would need to get, then go for a credit check and things like that. So I'd answer your question by saying it's a little bit of both. You don't have to find the rates or the lenders. We find all the rates and the lenders for you, but you have to do the application.
Okay, that's helpful. And then in terms of that tax credit, that comes to the homeowner regardless of whether they're financing or paying cash. Is that correct, or is that?
That is correct. Typically, though, you might be surprised when you read the finer print on typical solar loans. Most solar loans, they have something called a buy down to keep the interest rates so low. So a typical solar loan interest rate might be just around 1%. But in that 1%, there's also something called a buy down to keep your rate at 1%. Typically, solar financing companies will ask for the tax credit to be applied to the loan within the first year and a half. So they would say, okay, well, you get the solar tax credit, but then in a year and a half, you have to pay us 26% of the system's cost in a lump sum. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Well, great. Thank you for
Thank you.
showing up, everybody. Heidi.
Thank you so much, Tim. That was a great presentation.
Well, we're always happy to help, and we're looking forward to getting as much information out there to the people as we can. That's what keeps me going every day. Wakes me up in the morning. So really look forward to hearing from you and to give this information to you on a case-by-case basis. Very happy to come to your home and explain this to you and answer any more questions. It's also really can be really uninvasive if you want to start the process by just sending us a copy of an electric bill. We can send you this digital proposal really quickly and easily that is formatted to your home. And that way, you don't have to worry about any sales pressure or anything like that. We just basically give you the information and you can go from there. And we are SunDay Solar, and my phone number is 434-960-1541. I am Tim Heltzel at SunDay Solar, and email address is tim@SundaySolar. And also on here is the wonderful Heidi Hahn from SunDay Solar.
Thank you again, Tim.